Thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring today's video. No one man builds a spaceship. The Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer has just launched, and it would be easy for me to say that ESA made it. But while that is true, that glosses over the colossal process that took a vague idea on a design board and turned it into a fully realized behemoth of metal and carbon fiber hurtling up through the atmosphere. Building a probe like JUICE is a massive undertaking. For JUICE, it was a task that involved 18 countries, 60 companies, 11 years, a 5-city tour, and 350.8 million euros of technical expertise, equipment, and resources. By delving into the story of the creation of JUICE, we gain a greater appreciation for the incredible process by which such craft are made. JUICE launched on the 14th of April 2023, but that is only half the story. I'm Alex McColgan and you're watching Astrum, and it's time to explore the first half of the journey of JUICE, the half that took place before the probe even left Earth. Jupiter's icy moons, Callisto, Europa, and Ganymede, hide a fascinating secret beneath their surface. All are thought to house deep subsurface oceans, some of them larger than the combined oceans here on Earth. These are of immense interest in the scientific community, as such large bodies of water could potentially make these moons habitable. Water and nutrients are two of the key ingredients for life. We have deep sea ecosystems here on Earth that thrive on nothing else. Could microbes also have formed in the depths of the moon's icy oceans? Without more information about those oceans, it's hard to tell. What exactly do they look like? What are their features? What are they hiding? Where is their liquid and where is their ice? By better understanding these icy worlds, scientists can gain insight into how they formed and evolved in the past, and can better predict the odds of life emerging in them and other icy worlds outside our solar system. As such, it was decided on the 2nd of May 2012 that a new mission to explore these moons should be launched. JUICE beat out budget proposals for a new gravitational wave observatory and an advanced telescope for high-energy astrophysics, becoming the European Space Agency's main focus for a large-scale mission over 2015 to 2025. But that decision needed refining. JUICE was still only a partially formed idea. Even once it was decided that Jupiter's icy moons should be explored, the next question was, what scientific instruments should JUICE carry to explore it? So just 28 days after JUICE was announced, ESA reached out to the wider scientific community, asking them what they would like to see on JUICE. In the end, 10 scientific instruments were selected, including cameras with a spatial resolution as fine as 2.5 meters per pixel, spectrometers picking up features down to a resolution of 75 meters, a laser altimeter, and plasma and particle monitors. A magnetometer would study Jupiter's magnetic fields, and an ice-penetrating radar would peer through its surface to see the structures that lay beneath. These parts would be provided from various member states of the European Space Agency, 16 nations in total. Along with them, the US and Japan space agencies would also contribute. Airbus Defence and Space was selected as the primary company in charge of building JUICE. ESA had set the expectations for the mission, but it was up to Airbus to design, develop, integrate, and test JUICE before delivering it to the Guiana Space Center in France to be launched. And it would be no easy task. JUICE would be a solar panel probe working at the limits of how far from the sun solar panels could be expected to function. At 740 million kilometers, sunlight is so dim, it's equivalent to about 3% of what we see on Earth. The panels for JUICE would need to be massive, 85 meters squared, to provide JUICE the power it needed for its various instruments. Those instruments would need to be protected. Jupiter's environment is full of intense radiation, which will damage unshielded components. Passing through its shadow is so cold temperatures reached minus 250 degrees Celsius. But JUICE would be passing Venus on its way to Jupiter as part of one of many gravity assists, so it would also need to be able to endure hot temperatures. It was there to study magnetic fields, so its own internal electronics couldn't create magnetic fields able to interfere with its sensors. And as there was a chance it was heading to environments where life could thrive, the utmost care had to be taken that no Earth-based bacteria would be introduced to those environments once the mission was over, and JUICE crashed into the surface of Ganymede. These designs took time, and it wasn't until 2017 that Airbus felt that the designs were complete. Later that year, the first parts started to come to life. One such part was RHIME. JUICE is a big craft, and its radar for icy moon exploration is a massive 16 meters long. It would be incredibly sensitive, able to see through 9 kilometers of ice to make out structural details to a resolution of 50 meters. Testing the part involved creating a model version of JUICE and then hanging it below a helicopter, which then flew it over the field near Friedrichshafen, Germany. I wonder how far into the Earth it was able to see. It must have been a fun sight for any residents in the area. Another model was heat tested in Noordwijk, the Netherlands, at ESA's main facility for spacecraft development and testing, ESTEC. JUICE's parts would need to endure the freezing cold of space, so technicians there used liquid nitrogen. They had 25,000 litres of it to freeze the chamber down to minus 180 degrees Celsius. However, JUICE would also be travelling near heat sources, so they simultaneously blasted it on one side with an array of lamps and mirrors, raising the temperature to 200 degrees Celsius. The JUICE model, fortunately, proved capable of enduring these incredible temperature variations. However, these were just models. The true JUICE, the one to be launched, began its life in Madrid. There, in July 2019, its towering 580 kilogram chassis was assembled. You really get a sense of the scale of the probe by seeing the technicians working alongside it. The completed JUICE weighs 5,300 kilograms, although about 3,000 kilograms of that is the chemical propellant it needs to complete its maneuvers. JUICE needs a lot of juice. Just a month later, JUICE opened its eyes. Its nav cam had been completed in Toulouse, and what better target for it to look at than its eventual destination, Jupiter? The image at this distance is a little pixelated, and the saturation of Jupiter is bright as a consequence of trying to see Jupiter's moons too. But even before it was fully assembled, JUICE has already set eyes on its target. But the chassis was not ready to receive its eyes yet. First, it left Madrid, travelling across Europe to Lampoldshausen, Germany. It would receive its thrusters there, one large 400 Newton main engine and 20 smaller thrusters. Next, it took a short trip to Friedrichshafen, where its technical equipment began to be integrated into it. This lengthy process took a whole year, as each piece was carefully added and tested. Balloons were used to simulate weightlessness in space, allowing the massive 10-meter magnetic boom to practice unfolding itself. Like many craft, JUICE would need to fold itself in to be able to fit on the rocket that would later carry it into space. But finally, this stage was complete. Of course, this meant more testing was in order. JUICE was taken to ESTEC as it was home to the largest vacuum chamber in Europe, the Large Space Simulator. Getting the large JUICE into the even larger LSS was the work of 2 days. Finally though, after carefully transporting using massive crane equipment, JUICE began its testing. Meanwhile, its components, such as its antenna, got to try out ESTEC's Blue Room. This unique room is an excellent place to try receiving delicate radio signals. The blue spikes that make up the room do an excellent job of cancelling out all other sounds and stray signals. RHIME's 16-meter antenna was scaled down for these tests to about 80 centimeters to take advantage of the facilities by using a more optimal frequency. The tests went well, and within a few months JUICE was on the road again. This time it was headed for Toulouse, France. It was drawing closer to its eventual launch site, but it had one more step to make along the way. What probe would be complete without its solar panels? Made up of 2,356 solar cells each, the panels of JUICE would also fold out before launch, only extending once the probe was safely up in space. JUICE was receiving 10 panels in total, 5 on each side, and unlike the other components, which would be hidden inside protective shielding, these panels would have to endure the heat and radiation of space on their own. They had to be maneuverable, as too much energy could cause the internal workings of JUICE to overheat. Power would be regulated carefully. All of this had to be done under the most careful of conditions. Clean rooms were used all along this process to reduce the risk of dust and bacteria getting onto the equipment. JUICE was a little behind schedule, so had to be flown into Toulouse, representing one of the first times this had happened. This last stage of integration and testing was evidently not easy, as it was not until January 2023, a year and a half later, that JUICE was finally ready. And the rest of the story you may already know. JUICE was taken to French Guiana, and on the 14th of April, aboard an Ariane 5 rocket, was launched into space. It will now spend the next 8 years traveling through space, performing 3 gravity assists around the Earth and 1 around Venus. Finally, in 2031, it will arrive at the Jovian system and will begin its careful evaluation of the icy moons there, the awe-inspiring Ganymede, Callisto, and Europa. In time, and assuming that nothing goes wrong, the data and answers it will provide may give us insight into whether life could exist under those frozen surfaces. And eventually, in 2035, its mission will come to an end, and it will crash into Ganymede. Its mission hopefully a resounding success. But it's important to recognize just how much of its journey has already taken place before it could leave the planet. JUICE represents a huge engineering feat, involving hundreds of people. And while we await with eager excitement the results of this work, it's important to recognize and celebrate the expertise that allowed it to come into being in the first place. If JUICE ultimately finds the answers scientists hope for around Jupiter, it will only be because of the great endeavor that took place here on Earth. Among the many memorable moments in JUICE's journey on Earth, one that caught my attention was the time in the Blue Room. The spiky foam on the walls there were highly effective at blocking stray signals, allowing JUICE to complete its work unimpeded. And stopping stray signals is something near to the heart of the sponsor of today's video, NordVPN. NordVPN protects your computer traffic by encrypting your data, keeping it safe from malicious hackers and invasive bots. But its new threat protection goes one step further than just encryption. Once it's installed, it'll warn you of dangerous websites you're heading into and can delete corrupted files attempting to sneak viruses past your computer's defenses. Nord is also bringing out MeshNet, a free way to connect your devices anywhere that's low latency and high speed, just like a local area network. If you're interested in trying them out, use my link in the description below to get an extra 4 months for free on top of your 2-year subscription. Give it a try. A big thanks to my patrons and members for supporting the channel. There are a bunch of new rewards, so if you're interested, check them out. I also have a Discord server. I'd love to see you there. For all these, check the links in the description. All the best, and see you next time.